Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past the main screen of his ship. The UES Discovery was 3 days into another boring survey mission near the Kepler 442 system. For the past 6 months, they had been mapping empty space and taking readings of dead planets. It was important work, but Jake sometimes missed the excitement of his old combat days. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez worked at her communication station, checking for any signals from nearby human colonies. Chief Science Officer Dr. Lisa Chen was studying rock samples from the last planet they visited. Everything was normal and peaceful, just like every other day in human space. That peace ended when Amy's station started beeping rapidly. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Amy said, her voice tense. She put her hand to her earpiece and listened carefully. "It's encrypted, but it's definitely human. The signal is very weak and breaking up." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Can you clean it up?" "Working on it now, sir." Amy's fingers moved quickly across her control panel. "I'm running it through our decryption software." Tony Blake, their communications specialist, hurried over to help Amy. He was young but very good with complex signals. Together, they worked to make sense of what they were hearing. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. Dr. Chen checked her star charts. "Based on the signal direction, it has to be from Sanctuary Prime. That's our newest colony, about 2 weeks away from here." Jake knew about Sanctuary Prime. It was a farming world with about 50,000 people. They grew food for the other human colonies in that sector. Most of the settlers were families with children who just wanted a quiet life away from the crowded inner worlds. "Got it!" Tony shouted suddenly. "The signal is coming through now." The bridge fell silent as a crackling voice filled the air. The transmission was full of static, but they could hear the fear and desperation clearly. "This is Governor Sam Parker of Sanctuary Prime. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown alien ships appeared in orbit 6 hours ago. They started bombing our cities without any warning or demands." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Alien attacks on human colonies were rare. Most alien species either traded peacefully with humans or simply avoided them completely. The message continued. "The ships are identified as Zephyrian hegemony vessels. We don't understand why they're attacking us. We never had any contact with them before. They're targeting schools, hospitals, and housing areas. This isn't a military attack. They're trying to kill everyone." Amy looked sick. "Captain, the Zephyrians have been neutral toward us for decades. We have trade agreements with them." "Not anymore," Jake said grimly. Governor Parker's voice came through again, weaker now. "Our planetary defense grid is down. The orbital platforms are destroyed. We estimate that 40% of our population is already dead or missing. We've moved the survivors into the underground bunkers, but the aliens are sending ground troops now." Dr. Chen was checking her computer. "Captain, the Zephyrians have a powerful military. If they want that colony destroyed, those people don't have much time. Colony Defense Chief Maria Santos is coordinating our resistance," the message went on. "We have maybe 2,000 militia fighters with basic weapons. The aliens have battle armor and heavy weapons. We can't hold them off for long." Jake stood up and started pacing. His ship was fast, but it was built for exploration, not fighting. The Discovery had only basic defensive weapons and a crew of 200 scientists and support staff. Even if they rushed to Sanctuary Prime, what could they do against a Zephyrian battle fleet? "How far is the nearest human military base?" he asked. Tony checked his navigation computer. "The closest fleet is stationed at New Terra. That's about a month away at maximum speed." A month. By then, everyone on Sanctuary Prime would be dead. The transmission crackled back to life. "If anyone receives this message, please tell our families that we fought hard. Tell them we didn't give up. The children are scared, but we're keeping them safe in the deepest bunkers." Amy wiped tears from her eyes. Jake felt anger building in his chest. These were innocent people, farmers and teachers and shopkeepers. They had never hurt anyone. "We're running out of food and medical supplies," Governor Parker continued. "Some of the wounded are dying because we don't have enough doctors. The aliens seem to enjoy hunting us. They could finish us quickly. but they're taking their time. Jake made his decision. Amy, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them about the attack and request immediate military support. Yes, sir. Tony, plot a course for Sanctuary Prime, maximum speed. Captain, Dr. Chen said quietly. Even if we leave right now, we won't get there for 2 weeks. And when we do arrive, what can we do against military ships? I don't know, Jake admitted. But we can't just sit here and listen to these people die. The message from Sanctuary Prime was getting weaker. The aliens are breaking through our outer defenses. We can hear explosions getting closer. Maria says we have maybe 6 hours before they reach the main bunker complex. Governor Parker's voice was barely a whisper now. To whoever finds this recording, remember that we died as humans. We protected our children to the very end. We never surrendered. Tell our story. Tell them to remember us. The transmission ended with the sound of distant explosions. The bridge of the Discovery was completely silent. Every person there understood what they had just heard. 50,000 innocent people were being slaughtered, and there was nothing anyone could do to save them. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But in their faces he saw something changing. The same anger he felt was growing in them too. Set course for Sanctuary Prime, he ordered, and send another message to Earth Command. Tell them that the Zephyrian hegemony has just made the biggest mistake in their species' history. As the Discovery turned toward the distant colony, none of them knew that their desperate race to help would trigger something that had been sleeping in humanity's soul for over a century. The SOS from Sanctuary Prime would awaken humanity's true nature, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the emergency message that had just arrived from Captain Morrison's ship. The words on the screen seemed impossible to believe. Sanctuary Prime was under attack. 50,000 civilians were being massacred by the Zephyrian hegemony. Kate had been in charge of Earth's defense forces for 8 years. She had dealt with pirates, rebels, and minor alien conflicts, but nothing like this. The Zephyrians had always been neutral. They traded with humans and kept to their own territory. This attack made no sense. How long ago did this happen? She asked her aide, Lieutenant Commander Roy Gibson. The message was sent 12 hours ago, ma'am. By now the colony is probably... Roy couldn't finish the sentence. Kate closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her 30 years of military service, she had never lost an entire colony. The thought of all those families, all those children, made her feel sick with rage. Get me a secure line to the Defense Council, she ordered. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, the holographic images of Earth's top military leaders appeared around the conference table. General Frank Collins from Mars Command, Admiral Betty Johnson from the Outer Rim Fleet, and Director Nina Foster from Military Intelligence all looked as shocked as Kate felt. Has anyone been able to contact Sanctuary Prime directly? General Collins asked. We've tried everything, Admiral Johnson replied. Complete communication blackout. Either their equipment is destroyed or... She didn't need to finish. Kate looked at each of her colleagues. They were all thinking the same thing. The human military was spread thin across 17 star systems. Most of their ships were designed for exploration and defense, not for major wars. The closest battle fleet was weeks away from Sanctuary Prime. We need to respond, Kate said firmly. We can't let this attack go unanswered. With what? Director Foster asked. Our nearest ships won't arrive in time to save anyone, and even if they did, the Zephyrians have one of the strongest militaries in the galaxy. Kate stood up and walked to the secure terminal in the corner of the room. Her hand hovered over the biometric scanner. What she was about to do would change everything. There is one option, she said quietly. Something we swore we would never use again. The others looked confused. Kate placed her palm on the scanner and spoke clearly into the microphone. Admiral, Kate Sullivan requesting access to Protocol Omega. Authorization code Phoenix Rising. The room fell silent. Even the youngest officer there had heard whispers about Protocol Omega. It was humanity's deepest secret, created during the brutal resource wars of the 23rd century. when human civilization nearly destroyed itself, fighting over water and minerals. Kate, you can't be serious, General Collins said. Protocol Omega was buried for a reason. It's been inactive for over a century. The resource wars ended because we created weapons so terrible that everyone agreed to hide them forever, Admiral Johnson added. Those systems were designed to fight other humans. We don't even know if they still work. Kate's authorization was accepted. Deep in the Luna Station archives, ancient computer systems began to wake up. Status lights that had been dark for generations started blinking green. The Zephyrians just proved that being peaceful makes us look weak, Kate said. They attacked our civilians because they thought we wouldn't fight back. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Protocol Omega was more than just hidden weapons. It was humanity's plan to transform their entire civilization into a war machine. During the resource wars, humans had learned to turn everything into a weapon. Mining ships became missile carriers. Trade stations became weapons factories. Even passenger vessels could be converted into troop transports in hours. The protocol had been created by the best military minds of that era, people who understood that humans were survivors above all else. They had fought wars with nuclear weapons while their planet was dying. They had kept fighting even when their cities were radioactive ruins. That knowledge, that terrible determination, had been built into Protocol Omega. Chief Engineer Tony Blake was working late in the Luna Station Technical Center when his computer suddenly came alive. Systems he had never seen before were activating themselves. Emergency construction protocols were starting up in shipyards across human space. What the hell is happening? He muttered, watching as his screens filled with data. Systems analyst Amy Rodriguez rushed over to help him. Together they watched as dormant facilities throughout human territory began to respond to the protocol activation. On the dead world of Titan 7, massive underground factories were starting their engines for the first time in over 100 years. These are weapons blueprints, Amy said, her voice filled with awe and fear. But I've never seen designs like this. These ships are built for one thing only: total destruction. The automated systems were working faster than any human crew could. Robot factories were already beginning to build the first wave of what the old files called retaliation class warships. These weren't exploration vessels or defensive platforms. They were pure instruments of war. At the same time, hidden artificial intelligences were coming online across human space. These AIs had been sleeping since the end of the resource wars, waiting for the day when humanity might need to become predators again. They began analyzing every piece of data about the Zephyrian hegemony, looking for weaknesses and planning attacks. Captain Jake Morrison, still racing toward Sanctuary Prime, in his little exploration ship, had no idea that his desperate message had triggered humanity's transformation. The discovery was still days away from the doomed colony, but across human space the greatest military buildup in galactic history was beginning. Trade ships received new orders and began installing hidden weapon systems. Mining operations started, producing military-grade materials instead of consumer goods. Peaceful colonies began training their populations for war. Admiral Kate Sullivan watched the reports coming in from across human territory. The sleeping giant was waking up and it was angry. She thought about the families on Sanctuary Prime, about the children hiding in bunkers while aliens hunted them for sport. The Zephyrians wanted to test our strength, she said to her staff. They're about to find out that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our absolute refusal to let anyone hurt our people without paying a terrible price. Within 72 hours, Protocol Omega would be fully active. The galaxy's peaceful traders and explorers would reveal their true nature. The descendants of the species that had once fought wars with atomic fire were about to remind the universe why that was a very bad idea. The Zephyrian hegemony had no idea what they had unleashed. They thought they were attacking weak farmers and scientists. Instead, they had awakened humanity's war god, and it was hungry for revenge. Commander Alex Turner had been sleeping when the emergency alert woke him up. His personal communicator was flashing red and making loud beeping sounds. He grabbed it quickly, still half asleep. "Turner here," he said. "Commander, report to Bay. 7 immediately. Priority Alpha orders from Earth Command. Alex had never heard of Priority Alpha before. He threw on his uniform and ran through the corridors of Titan Station. Other officers were running too, all looking confused and worried. Something big was happening. When he reached Bay 7, Alex stopped and stared. The massive hangar was full of ships he had never seen before. They were black and sleek with weapon systems that looked like nothing in the human fleet. Workers were loading missiles and ammunition into the ships as fast as they could. "Beautiful, aren't they?" said a voice behind him. Alex turned to see Captain Steve Martinez, one of the most experienced combat pilots in human space. Steve was looking at the ships with a strange smile on his face. "What are they?" Alex asked. "Retaliation-class destroyers, the first ships built under Protocol Omega. They've been waiting over 100 years for someone to give us a reason to use them." Alex walked closer to one of the ships. The hull was covered in armor that seemed to absorb light. The weapon ports were larger than anything he had seen on human vessels. This wasn't a ship built for exploration or defense. This was a ship built to kill. "How many people know about Protocol Omega?" Alex asked. "Not many. It was humanity's most classified secret, but not anymore." Steve handed Alex a data pad. "You're being reassigned. Congratulations, Commander. You're now part of the first retaliation fleet." Alex read the orders on the pad. His new mission was simple. Find and destroy every Zephyrian military target in the galaxy. No prisoners. No mercy. Complete annihilation. "Steve, this says we're supposed to target civilian infrastructure too. Power plants, food production, communication networks. That's against every law of war we have." Steve's smile disappeared. The Zephyrians threw out the laws of war when they started bombing schools and hospitals on Sanctuary Prime. Now we play by their rules. Across human space, similar scenes were happening on dozens of worlds. The hidden shipyards were working, around the clock, building warships with technology that had been locked away since the resource wars. These weren't the peaceful exploration vessels that other alien species knew about. These were weapons of total destruction. Dr. Helen Davis was studying captured Zephyrian communications at the Intelligence Center on New Mars. She had been a xenobiologist for 15 years, specializing in alien cultures and languages. What she found in the enemy transmissions made her blood run cold. "Admiral Johnson, you need to see this," she called over her superior. Admiral Betty Johnson looked at the translated messages on Helen's screen. The Zephyrians were celebrating their attack on Sanctuary Prime. But worse than that, they were planning more attacks. "They're calling it Operation Soft Target," Helen explained. "The attack on Sanctuary Prime was just a test. They wanted to see how humans would respond to civilian casualties." "A test for what?" "A full invasion of human space. They think we're weak because we've been peaceful for so long. They believe humans won't fight back if they target non-military colonies." Admiral Johnson felt sick. The Zephyrians had killed 50,000 innocent people just to see what would happen. They had turned genocide into an experiment. "There's more," Helen continued. "They're not working alone. I found communications with the Corvan Empire and the Helix Confederacy. Other alien governments have been encouraging this attack. They want to see humanity weakened." The Admiral immediately sent this information to Earth Command. Within hours, Protocol Omega was expanded. The target list now included any alien civilization that had supported the Zephyrian attack, even secretly. Captain Jake Morrison finally reached the Sanctuary Prime system in his exploration ship. What he found there broke his heart. The planet was a burning ruin. The orbital stations were destroyed. There were no signs of life anywhere. He tried to contact the surface, but there was no response. The underground bunkers where the colonists had hidden were silent. 50,000 people had simply vanished. As Jake stared at the dead world below, his long-range sensors detected something approaching. A fleet of black ships was entering the system. For a moment, he thought they might be more Zephyrian vessels, coming to finish the job. Then he recognized the hull designs. These were human ships, but unlike any he had ever seen. They moved with deadly grace, their weapon systems already powered up and ready to fire. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Turner of the 1st Retaliation Fleet. Identify yourself. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Discovery. I'm the one who reported the attack on this colony. Understood, Captain. You should leave this system immediately. We have work to do here. Jake watched as the human fleet spread out across the system. They weren't there to rescue anyone. They were there to make sure no trace of the Zephyrian presence remained. Every piece of wreckage, every damaged satellite, every piece of evidence of the alien attack was systematically destroyed. Commander Turner, what's the point of this? The colony is already gone. The point, Captain, is to send a message. Any alien species that attacks human civilians will find their entire civilization erased from existence. No exceptions. Jake had never heard a human officer speak with such cold hatred before. These weren't the same people who had left Earth to explore the galaxy in peace. Something had changed in humanity. Something dark and terrible. As the retaliation fleet finished its work at Sanctuary Prime, similar fleets were moving towards Zephyrian space. The aliens had wanted to test human resolve. They were about to discover that they had awakened something that should have been left sleeping forever. The peaceful traders and scientists that the galaxy knew were gone. In their place stood the descendants of a species that had survived by being the most dangerous predators on their planet. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of thinking that evolution could be forgotten. They were wrong, and they were about to pay for that mistake with their entire civilization. General Frank Collins stood in the war room on Mars, watching the holographic display that showed human fleets moving across the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian worlds. Blue dots showed human forces. In the past 2 weeks, dozens of red dots had simply disappeared from the map. Status report, he ordered. Colonel Dan Rogers stepped forward. Sir, the 5th Retaliation Fleet has finished operations in the Kepler sector. All Zephyrian military bases in that region have been eliminated. We estimate their fleet strength has been reduced by 60%. What about survivors? None. Sir, following Protocol Omega guidelines, no enemy personnel were taken prisoner. Any Zephyrian ship that attempted to surrender was destroyed. Frank nodded. The old him might have felt sick about such tactics, but the old him had never seen 50,000 human children burned alive by aliens who thought it was funny. War changed people, and humanity was changing fast. Admiral Betty Johnson was leading the main assault on the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime. Her massive fleet included not just the new Retaliation-class ships, but also converted civilian vessels. Cargo haulers now carried planet-killer missiles. Passenger liners had been turned into troop transports carrying the most dangerous soldiers humanity had ever produced. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, reported. Her communications officer put it through. The face of a Zephyrian leader appeared on the main screen. His skin was pale blue and his large eyes showed obvious fear. Human fleet. This is Prime Minister Zaxtel of the Zephyrian hegemony. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. Betty looked at the alien with cold eyes. There are no terms. You wanted to test human resolve by murdering our civilians. Consider this your test results. Please, we can negotiate. We will pay reparations. We will give you territory. Anything you want. What we want is for your species to serve as a warning to others. You chose to target children and families, now you die. The transmission ended. Betty turned to her weapons officer. Begin orbital bombardment. Target population centers first. The human fleet opened fire. Thousands of missiles and energy beams struck the planet below. Cities that had stood for centuries were vaporized in seconds. The Zephyrians tried to fight back, but their planetary defenses were designed for conventional warfare, not for the total destruction that humanity was bringing. Meanwhile, smaller human fleets were hunting down Zephyrian ships throughout the galaxy. Commander Lucy Wright led a squadron of hunter-killers that specialized in finding enemies who tried to run away. Her ships were fast and deadly, designed to chase down fleeing vessels and destroy them before they could escape. Contact bearing 27 Mark V, her sensor operator reported. Looks like a Zephyrian transport with about 3,000 refugees. Are they armed? Lucy asked. Negative. It's a civilian evacuation ship. Lucy thought about the children. who had died on Sanctuary Prime. The families who had been hunted for sport by Zephyrian soldiers. Fire at will. The transport ship was destroyed in a single volley. Lucy felt nothing as she watched it explode. The old Lucy might have cared about innocent aliens, but that Lucy had died with the people of Sanctuary Prime. Dr. Peter Kim was working with military intelligence, analyzing alien communications across the galaxy. What he found confirmed humanity's worst fears. The attack on Sanctuary Prime had been planned by more than just the Zephyrians. Admiral Sullivan, I've decoded messages between the Zephyrians and at least 6 other alien governments, he reported. The Corvan Empire provided intelligence about human colony defenses. The Helix Confederacy sold them advanced weapons. The Stellar Union even offered to help with the invasion of Earth itself. Kate Sullivan looked at the evidence on her screen. The galaxy's so-called peaceful civilizations had been plotting humanity's destruction while pretending to be friends and trading partners. How many species were involved? At least 12 that we can prove. Maybe more. They all thought humans were too weak to fight back effectively. They saw us as easy targets for conquest and exploitation. Kate made a decision that would change galactic history forever. Expand Protocol Omega to include all hostile species. If they wanted humanity destroyed, then they've declared war on us whether they admit it or not. New target lists were created. Human fleets that had finished destroying Zephyrian worlds received new orders. The war was expanding beyond just revenge for Sanctuary Prime. It was becoming a campaign to establish human dominance over any species that had ever threatened them. The Galactic Council, a group of older alien civilizations that had tried to maintain peace for centuries, finally attempted to intervene. Ambassador Marcus Taylor delivered humanity's response to their headquarters on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The Galactic Council demands that humanity cease its aggressive actions immediately, the Council's spokesman announced. Marcus looked at the assembled alien representatives with contempt. Where was the Galactic Council when human children were being murdered? Where were your demands for peace when our colony was burning? The Zephyrian attack was regrettable, but your response has been completely disproportionate. You've killed billions of innocent aliens, and they would have killed billions of innocent humans if we had let them. The difference is, we're not going to let anyone threaten us again. The Council will impose economic sanctions on all human worlds if this continues. Marcus smiled coldly. Try it. See what happens to your worlds when human trade ships stop visiting them. See how long your economies last without human technology and resources. You need us more than we need you. As Marcus left the Council chamber, he knew that humanity had crossed a line. They were no longer just defending themselves. They were establishing a new order in the galaxy, one where human interests came first and everyone else came second. Back on Earth, children learned new songs about the brave soldiers who were protecting them from alien threats. Factories worked day and night building more weapons. Every human citizen knew that their species was at war, and they supported it completely. The peaceful explorers who had left Earth centuries ago were gone forever. In their place stood the true children of a world that had survived ice ages, plagues, and nuclear wars. The galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute unwillingness to be victims ever again. 2 years had passed since the SOS signal from Sanctuary Prime changed everything. Captain Jake Morrison now stood on the bridge of the dreadnought UES Vengeance, watching as his fleet patrolled the space where the Zephyrian hegemony once existed. Where there had once been a mighty alien empire, now there was only empty space and dead worlds. Jake was no longer the peaceful explorer who had discovered that desperate signal. That man had died with the colonists of Sanctuary Prime. In his place stood a warrior who commanded one of the most powerful ships in human space. The gentle scientist who once studied rocks and gases was now an expert in orbital bombardment and planetary conquest. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh. Jake felt his muscles tense. Any distress call in this region meant trouble. "Source?" It's coming from a small research station on the edge of former Zephyrian space. They say they're under attack by pirates. Pirates in this sector? Jake was surprised. Most criminals avoided areas where human fleets operated. They had learned that humanity no longer showed mercy to anyone who threatened their people. Shall we investigate, sir? Jake nodded. Set course. Maximum speed. As the Vengeance moved toward the distress signal, Jake thought about how much the galaxy had changed. The Zephyrian hegemony was completely gone. Their homeworld was a radioactive wasteland. Their colonies were either destroyed or occupied by human forces. The few Zephyrian survivors were scattered refugees living in camps on alien worlds, serving as a permanent reminder of what happened when someone attacked human civilians. But the Zephyrians were just the beginning. Humanity had also destroyed the Corvan Empire for helping plan the attack. The Helix Confederacy was now a human protectorate after their government surrendered, rather than face total annihilation. 6 other alien civilizations had been reduced to primitive technology levels as punishment for their secret support of the assault on Sanctuary Prime. When the Vengeance arrived at the research station, Jake found something unexpected. The attackers weren't pirates. They were Zephyrian survivors trying to steal supplies and food. A small group of the aliens had somehow acquired weapons and were attempting to raid isolated outposts. Pathetic, Jake muttered as he watched the alien ships flee at the sight of his dreadnought. They were flying old cargo vessels with makeshift weapons. A few years ago, the Zephyrian military had been one of the strongest in the galaxy. Now their people were reduced to scavenging for scraps. Orders, sir? Asked his weapons officer. Destroy them all. No survivors. The human fleet opened fire. The Zephyrian ships were vaporized instantly. Jake felt no satisfaction from the victory. It wasn't even a fight. It was just pest control. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the memorial garden that had been built where Sanctuary Prime's orbital station once transmitted its final messages. The garden contained 50,000 trees, one for each person who had died in the attack. In the center stood a massive stone monument with the names of every victim carved into black marble. Kate came here often to remember why humanity had changed. The peaceful civilization that had existed before the attack seemed like a dream now. Humans were no longer explorers and traders. They were the galaxy's dominant military power, and everyone knew it. General Susan Murphy approached Kate as she stood before the monument. Susan now commanded the Eternal Vigil program, humanity's network of monitoring stations that watched every corner of the galaxy for potential threats. Admiral, the latest reports from our intelligence stations, Susan said, handing Kate a datapad. Kate read the information with satisfaction. Alien governments across the galaxy were cutting their military budgets and increasing trade with human worlds. Species that had once been neutral or hostile were now desperately trying to prove their friendship with humanity. The lesson of what happened to the Zephyrians and their allies had been learned well. Any new threats? Kate asked. None. The Andromedan Collective has offered to share their medical technology with us for free. The Crystal Federation is asking permission to establish trade posts in human space. Even the ancient Etherian Collective has sent ambassadors offering formal alliance treaties. Kate smiled grimly. Fear was a powerful motivator. Every alien species in the galaxy now understood that attacking humans led to complete extinction. Not defeat, not conquest, but total erasure from existence. What about the refugee populations? The surviving Zephyrians are being monitored constantly. Most are working in labor camps, helping to rebuild the worlds they destroyed. The other defeated species are following the same pattern. They're grateful to be alive. Admiral Jack Turner, brother of the Alex Turner who had led the first retaliation fleet, was overseeing the establishment of new human colonies on former alien worlds. The best planets that had once belonged to humanity's enemies were now being settled by human families. It was a form of justice that the colonists of Sanctuary Prime would have appreciated. As Jack walked through the construction sites of New Sanctuary, the replacement colony built on the former Zephyrian homeworld, he thought about the price of peace. The galaxy was quieter now. Trade flowed freely between human and alien worlds. Piracy had almost completely disappeared. No species dared to threaten any human settlement. But this peace had been bought with the blood of entire civilizations. Humanity had proven that they would commit genocide to protect their own people. The galaxy's other species lived in constant fear that they might accidentally anger the humans and face the same fate as the Zephyrians. Jake Morrison returned to the memorial world, built where Sanctuary Prime had once orbited. He stood before the monument and read the words carved into the stone. "Tell them we died as humans, tell them to remember us." "We remembered," Jake said quietly to the memorial. "We made sure the galaxy will never forget what happens when someone hurts our people." As Jake spoke, construction crews were putting the finishing touches on humanity's newest project. It was a massive space station positioned exactly where Sanctuary Prime had once been. But this wasn't a research facility or trading post. It was a fortress, armed with weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. The station's name was carved in letters large enough to be seen from space. Never again. Children throughout human space learned about Sanctuary Prime in school. They learned about the 50,000 people who died there. They learned about the aliens who thought humans were too weak to fight back. And they learned about the terrible price those aliens paid for their mistake. The galaxy had a new order. Now, humanity stood at the top, not because they were the oldest or wisest species, but because they had proven they were the most dangerous. The peaceful traders who had once explored the stars were gone forever. In their place stood the children of Earth, a world that had survived everything the universe could throw at it. They had learned the most important lesson in galactic politics. It was better to be feared than to be victims. The SOS from Sanctuary Prime had awakened humanity's war god, and it would never sleep again.